What's going on, peeps? Today, we are going to be tackling a genre I have never talked about on this channel, the regional Mexican scene. Due to this genre being in a completely different language, I'll be leaving Spanish subtitles throughout the video for Spanish viewers. This style of music has had a massive rise in popularity throughout 2023, and by far, the leading force behind all of it is Peso Pluma. He has over 50 million monthly listeners and scored a top 5 hit months back, Ella Bella Sola. But out of all the other regional Mexican acts, why did he get the most traction? How did he even get so popular in the first place? Is he gang related? All these questions and more will be answered in this video. The appeal of Peso Pluma, or El Atractivo del Peso Pluma. Hassan Laija was born on June 15th, 1999, in Zapopan, Jalisco. He first found his calling to music growing up in Guadalajara, where he started learning how to play the guitar through YouTube videos at the age of 15. He continued to develop his craft by writing songs in his diary that were inspired by regional Mexican music. He would be teased by his friends for having this diary as it was girly, but it ended up working out for him as he practiced the art of rhythm in poetry. It became his therapy. He settled the name Peso Pluma, translated to featherweight in English. This name was inspired by his friends who called him skinny and being compared to the legendary featherweight Mexican boxer Marco Antonio Barrera. Following years of writing music with cousin Roberto Tito Leija Garcia, the two invested enough money to record their first 2 live albums in 2020, Disco in Vivo, Volumes 1 and 2. It was released through the indie label El Cartel de Los Angeles, featuring live recordings of their hometown performances. He put out his debut studio album, A In Que, which is Oh and What in English, on April 20th to minimal success. The rest of the year saw him putting out one-off singles with funny cover arts looking back. His second studio album was released next year on March 19th, titled Efectos Secundarios, which means side effects in English. These were just records he made with friends, and he didn't even see it as a professional release until it started getting popular. He was then dedicated to improving his craft and building his Mexico regional sound. Most of the songs are about relationships and his love for drinking and substances. Por la Noches was showing the signs of Pluma building that sound. He'd eventually switched labels, signing to Prajin Records in late 2021. Things started to pick up quick in 2022 when he collaborated with Raul Vega on El Belicon, which spoke on local narco culture. Both artists took on the roles of drug cartel members in this music video, which absolutely took off on TikTok and YouTube. It gained 10 million views in a month. In celebration of his recent success, Pluma put out the Sembrando EP on 420. Nice. It was a 6-song collection of stories inspired by the events of that very day. The project was also acknowledged for pushing the corridos tumbabos genre, which is Mexico regional fused trap, to the spotlight. It wasn't too long before his supposed honor towards the cartel would get him in trouble. Siempre Pendientes was released in August, which describes working for infamous drug lord El Chapo. This is called Narcocorrido, a genre dedicated to themes of marijuana and illegal drug trades. The single's music video was taken down 3 days later over public outrage. If this wasn't enough, Pluma would perform the song live in October at the 8 Music Fest in Culiacan. During his performance, there was an image of El Chapo displayed on the screen. It received major backlash from the audience, show organization, as well as Culiacan City Council and citizens, with the festival's initial goal being the end of drug culture in the city. This promotion sparked the CMASAC to publicly condemn the performance. The association claimed accountability from Municipal President Juan de Dos James for applying sanctions on the singer, citing Article 254 on the Penal Code and up to 2 years in prison. The city council defends the singer's freedom of expression, despite disapproval of the drug leader's image being projected. Pluma would go on to defend himself in 2023. They tried to smear me there, but it's nothing that cannot be fixed. I kept going further with my career. I am an artist, and we do nothing more than appear on stage and sing what we write. He denied any connection to the cartel. He just sings from the perspective of one. This only proves that controversy sells, as his catalog started taking off worldwide. He continued to hop on big collaborations with other notable corridos acts, putting out AMG with Nathaniel Cano and Gabido Ballesteros, PRC with Cano, and El Azul with Junior H. Those tracks gained hundreds of millions of streams, and he was soon touring across Mexico. He was doing the simple snippet strategy on TikTok, where he previews the song before release and everybody gets hyped about it. There were dance trends and controversy, but what's new? A remix of his 2021 track Por las Noches with female singer Nicki Nicole took off as well. This was the start of regional Mexican music rising up the Billboard Hot 100 majority English charts. The takeover had begun. The next superstar collaboration was with Eslaban Abenado, who teamed up to produce Ella Bella Sola. It premiered on TikTok and got a lot of attention. After being released in March, it absolutely exploded, debuting at number 26 on the Hot 100, eventually climbing to number 4 on the all-genre chart. His first top 10, and the first regional Mexican single to hit the top 5 ever. He would go on to chart 19 songs on the chart throughout the first half of 2023. Soon he was doing live performances on English television shows, with the occasional backlash for promoting narco culture. It didn't stop the man from securing 50 million monthly listeners on Spotify. In order to grow his brand and shine the spotlight on smaller artists, he created his own indie label, Double P Records. He released his long-awaited third studio album Genesis on June 22nd, selling 73,000 in his first week, debuting at number 3. His success has resulted in practically every major Latin act reaching out to him for a feature, like Becky G and Bizarre Rap. He'd become the most streamed act in Mexico, looking to be the closest competition to Bad Bunny. Both artists respect each other, don't worry. For now, the young star is gonna keep the ball rolling, and likely will collaborate with more English acts. I bet you Drake is gonna get him on his next record, just watch. Anyway, that was a lot to process, but let's just get into why people like him.
Cuando por las noches recordaba todo, el olor de aquel perfume sobre todo.
I'd describe his voice, especially with the regional Mexican live guitar and drum tunes he is known for, as classy. He's a bit of a crooner, sticking more towards his lower register, delivering in a raspy tone. He's taken a lot of his influence from Ariel Camacho and Valentin Elistade, who were known in the 2000s, to bridge this style of Mexican music to the 2020 mainstream. These artists were known for their classy, relaxing use of their vocals over lush guitars and strings. I had never heard of this style until maybe like last year, so it's all new to me. For some reason, Pluma sounds like he's in his 40s, but he's actually 22, and I mean that as a compliment because of how rich and mature his vocals can sound in his lower register. You wouldn't even be able to tell he was talking about trafficking drugs and living through gang wars if you're an English listener like me. I guess I'm just used to the aggressive delivery of hip-hop drill artists, flashing how many bodies they got and how they're gonna steal your girl. It feels more personal and story-orientated. Pluma proves that you can sell these topics in a more cheerful way, I guess? He doesn't hop into his upper register often from what I can tell, but he notably does on the chorus of Bye. Many could be annoyed by this use of his vocals, but it also shows some range. Pluma himself is frustrated that he can't hit high notes like some of his peers. He's said that his voice was made to sing corridos. He feels like it really shines there in comparison to any type of genre. That is definitely true. He can really light up the room on those tracks. It definitely helps that he has several other people assisting him that provide backup vocals that lead to some nice harmonies. His vocals aren't perfect, but that's fine as he just got started professionally less than like 3 years ago, so he has time to get better. But for the type of emotion he's trying to sell on these pieces, he executes it quite swimmingly.
Baby, a mí lo que me faltaba eras tú. Tú eres lo más rico que hay en el menú. Dile que se...
Despite all the violent things he discusses in his lyrics, he seems to be a pretty humble guy that will platform smaller artists on his records to get them more attention. This was especially the case on his latest album Genesis. Instead of getting a record loaded with mainstream features, he put on smaller artists like Giselle Nunez, Edgardo Nunez, Tito Double P, and Los Teres de la Sierra. Sure, he did get some of the more popular regional Mexican features like Junior H and Grupo Frontera, but a lot of these artists he had worked with before and built a connection with them through their similar style and pretty much brought them all up with him. They all play a great part in spicing up the record. None of them feel like cash grab features. As douchey as the lyrics are on Tulum, the collaboration with Frontera is so catchy and has the best production on the record provided by the band. I'd say the only cash grabby thing about his material is himself. He's the biggest artist in Mexico right now, so artists like Becky G and Bizarre Rap are getting that feature while they can. He's the moneymaker at the moment. Gotta respect that he's still art over monopoly. An obvious place where I can see Peso Pluma's music working is in an outside setting. You'll be chilling at some bar downtown near the ocean, and you might hear the music playing off at a speaker. Everybody's dancing, doing karaoke, and having a blast overall. The sound of Pluma's material is just so bright and accessible. Some of the translated lyrics tell a different story though. This is gonna sound like a backhanded compliment, but it works as good background music, a way of entertainment. I'm sure that's how Peso got his initial start, performing for various onlookers on the street with a band playing their instruments right next to him. A lot of the songs don't even sound like they're recorded in an actual studio, just recorded through a few sound mixers that connect to the instruments with very to little no mastering involved. It's got that traditional raw sound to it that you'd likely hear if you were trying to see him in concert. There's a reason he put out several live records before he was famous. He's trying to adapt to that crowd that loves hearing live music with no time for cuts or tweaks. I also enjoyed the brief interludes in those tracks, making the record feel more natural and classy, almost like the song is one big musical conversation. It's an all-around good party vibe, and I respect it in that context.
Ese amargo aliento me lleva.
Going through his back catalog of songs, it's pretty inspiring to see how far he's come. He was once craving the desires of luxury and wealth while consuming alcohol and marijuana back in 2020. Now in 2023, he can buy as much expensive clothes as he wants. This kid is pretty sincere in his writing, giving us an honest picture of his lifestyle and perspective on life. His debut record, IEK, follows Peso Pluma as he rolls a good log and relaxes throughout Los Angeles. He brings up his habit of drinking alcohol like Dom Perignon, which is vintage champagne, and dressing fashionable. There's a few relationship songs on false promises and moving on from the artificial. I gotta appreciate the sincere, mature moments on Hierarquia de Nivel about his father and the dangers of growing up in his area on Los Pixelados. During this era, he was in the middle financially. Not poor, but not rich either. We get the impression from this record that Peso is a smoking, drinking, middle-class kid with plans to travel the world. His second record in 2021, Efectos Secundarios, is pretty similar, including these topics, but there are sprinkles of being lovesick on Lo Di Que Di Mas, Melistorias, and La Encontre. The latter features the debut of the infamous Farty Horns. There's also something really funny about his love song to Mary Jane on Entre Humo y Jesus. Pretty clever metaphors in this one. They're going to judge you, they're going to envy you, but never mind, come and give me a kiss, my Mary, I love you. If you don't understand that he isn't talking about a woman by the time he talks about breaking and rolling, you're lost. The Imbrando EP is what you guessed from the cover art. A marijuana worship record. Nah, but those songs aside, I think El Capi and Mi Converte has the best sounding Mexican regional instrumentals yet. The lush, well-mixed production sounds amazing on these compared to the rest of the catalog thus far. A few touching lines on here. I know that you can erase me from your life, but you can never erase the moments. That's a thinker. These earlier Pluma records definitely showcase the most relatable parts of his personality as a middle-class alcoholic trying to make it out. He isn't afraid to show his vulnerabilities and struggles. It feels all the more fulfilling when he'd completely blow up the following year.
De poca edad, pero bien listo porque la verdad siempre persisto para grande llegar.
While his earlier records were just charming and relatable, he really came into his own as a writer as he got famous and started to develop a more story-driven writing style. His latest album, Genesis, is a bit of a longer release, which makes sense given his newfound fame. Pluma is more developed as a singer and performer. The record featured the same style production on the previous two records, slightly better produced, but also contains the farty horns that I love to talk about. Diving into the stories of this record, you get your everyday flexing and celebration tracks on VVS, Lady Gaga, Carnel, and Las Morras. Romantic love ballads like Tumlum, Lagunzas, and Luna, where he sings to the moon all the things he wishes he could have said to his former lover. A lot of wholesome moments there. Bye isn't too wholesome though, where we see Peso hopping into his upper register to sing bye and telling his former lover he doesn't suit him anymore and he will drown out all of his troubles with more women, alcohol, and drugs. Whatever helps you sleep at night, I guess. This isn't what sells me on his storytelling though. The gang-related stories on Genesis really sell it for me. I find it fascinating how he does this rockabye singing style while discussing trafficking, drugs, and living through gang wars. His latest record isn't the first time he discussed these topics. No one can be trusted anymore. That's why a 40 is always by my side on El Curo. El Vihan de la Huma might be the reason because it gets violent on that one. I think the reason he talks about it more openly now is because of all the controversy surrounding his previous Corredor songs. He knows that it'll get picked up by the media more than his standard party flexing tunes. I don't know know how many of these stories are based on his real life experiences, but you never know nowadays. He claims he isn't associated with any gangs, but that's probably the smart thing to say if he is. Rosa Pastel follows the tale of an ambitious Mexican footballer Millet who tries out the Rosa Pastel drug for the first time, leading him to become a drug trafficker, shipping them across the country of Amsterdam. 77 discusses more about his gang life with lyrics such as, "I don't have to trust nobody if I have my Glock." Rubicon is about his aspiration to sell tickets. Gavilan 2 is a lot darker, a track that glorifies the lifestyle and actions of a cartel member from their perspective. A skilled and experienced individual with military training and access to powerful weapons, he shows no remorse about killing and following orders without questions. The lyrics direct towards specific locations and events that suggest Peso has some sort of experience with this lifestyle through tales of kidnapping and other illegal activities. Let's hope he's just telling a story. Su Casa leans more into this theme where they celebrate their hometown of Jalisco for its known history of criminal activity. He also brings up the powerful, influential Senor that has thousands under control. There's a whole criminal underground here. PRC sees them talk about their preparation for shipping packages with drugs, enjoying the risk of it. La People once again brings up the harsh reality of violence that reeks over his nation, seeing a powerful struggle between the Culiacan drug cartels and authorities, the narcos being seen as the more invincible and feared ones. It follows a young, powerful drug lord who escapes arrest thanks to his armored vehicles and assistance from the Bandera drug cartel. What an interesting collection of stories there. I gotta give the man credit for taking a risk and facing the consequences. Hope the man stays safe though, because that lifestyle is not worth it when you're this famous. Never heard much Musica Mexicana until he blew up. Kinda got me to like it. He started strong, he had a lot of good collaborations, then his album came out and I liked most of the songs, but what I like about him is his energy. In his concerts, he always has a chill and energetic atmosphere, not like artists of old, something different but fun. Firstly, the music. I love the rhythm and mood it sets my feel-goods. Second, I love how exotic and fresh the music is, beats anything else in the US Top 50 by a long shot. As for Peso, I love his enthusiasm and smile. His style doesn't hurt either. Oh, and lastly and least important is his sex appeal.
Ojito chiquitico, mirada que enamora, un cuerpo que
Personally, Pluma's music isn't entirely for me. While I do enjoy a lot of songs that I don't understand, like Tiri Me Pregunto by Bad Bunny or Todo de Ti by Roy Alejandro, they really need to stand out from the rest of the Latin market for me to really care. One of the main issues why somebody wouldn't care for Pluma's material is the fact that pretty much all of his songs are similar to each other, especially in terms of production. I get that it's the regional Mexican style, but the songs just don't do anything that different from each other to make them stand out. This is a primary issue I've had with most Latin Mexican music, as it's either stock reggaeton beats or stock regional arrangements. But yeah, it can be hard to distinguish a Peso song from another, and not being fluent in the language doesn't help either. I've seen complaints about parts of the production, especially the farty horns that you hear in basically every regional Mexican crossover hit now. They're played in a very annoying and blunt way that doesn't sound good to specific listeners like me. Depends on how they're mixed with the rest of the instruments. His voice might put others off as well. He's got a raspy voice that cuts through the smooth guitar sometimes, failing to balance the buttery vibe. Others just find it annoying looking at a few TikToks. Looking past all the production vocal issues, Pluma has faced backlash for his narcocorridos lyrical topics discussing drug trafficking, the Mexican cartel, and brief instances of shouting out infamous figures like El Chapo. This could easily put someone who doesn't understand the context of the art off and be hesitant to support someone who could be glorifying deplorable behavior. He's already had concerts cancelled and rescheduled for these reasons, nearly facing jail time for that El Chapo incident back in late 2022 that I talked about earlier. From what we know, Peso has no connections with any gangs or the cartel. He's just a guy who makes music inspired by their experiences to give their side of things. It makes for an interesting conversation, but I can see how people in that region are uncomfortable about it. Thank you for checking out my thoughts on why Peso Pluma is so popular and loved throughout the world. Keep in mind that if I missed out any key details, it's likely they got lost in translation, as I'm not a Spanish speaker. If you'd like for me to dive into those stories Pluma tells about his incident with the law in more detail, let me know. I found those situations to be pretty intriguing. Also, who should I talk about next? Until next time, this was the appeal of Peso Pluma. Peace.